As America celebrates its 250th birthday this year, one Rockford veteran who helped defend those freedoms during World War II celebrates a major milestone of his own. Miriam Niesmeyer introduces us to a 102-year-old, and Miriam, he tells you he's very appreciative for his surprise drive-by birthday salute.
World War II Navy veteran Severi Vinji tells me he was completely caught off guard watching so many people drive by his home to wish him a happy birthday. World War II Navy veteran Severi Vinji salutes outside his Rockford home, watching dozens of community members drive by, wishing him a 102nd happy birthday.
It's more than overwhelming, you know. I might get my heart going again.
Vinji served in the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa during World War II.
Any good red-blooded American would want to do something about that.
He says he enlisted after the attack on Pearl Harbor.
God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her.
Vets Roll President Mark Finnegan helped organize the surprise celebration. He says honoring World War II veterans feels especially meaningful this year as America celebrates its 250th anniversary.
For Severi alone at 102, he's roughly 40% of the age of this country of 250 years, you know. It's just important for people, you know, younger generations like yourself to know that they're still there and the contribution they made to society. But it's also important for them to know that we appreciate what they did.
Vinji says he hopes younger generations remember the importance of putting others first and never taking their freedoms for granted.
Think American. Think of your friends and have faith. Let's hope we can rebuild our country back again to what it was once, to where people were for people.
Vinji tells me his secret to reaching 102 years old is to not smoke or drink, eat a healthy diet. He also says he thanks God every day.
And a very happy 102 birthday. Now, Finnegan says Vets Roll started honoring World War II veterans 18 years ago. He says it's so important to preserve World War II veterans' stories while they're still around.